Okay, so in the last lesson, we talked about some of the common pitfalls that we experience when improperly communicating with our loved ones with dementia. And in this one, we want to talk about some actual kind of tried and true strategies and techniques that work. These are things that I use every day when working with those with Alzheimer's. Now, generally, in the early stages of Alzheimer's, you don't really have to change your communication much. You can talk to your loved one, and should talk to your loved one, as you have throughout the rest of your life. But as we move into moderate and later stages of dementia, we really need to work on presenting information in a way that they can understand. The first thing we need to learn how to do is learn how to keep things a little more simple. We need to remember that less is more. Presenting things in kind of bite-sized, single-step operations can really help us out. If you go and you ask your loved one, hey, do you want to get out of bed and get ready and go get breakfast, and then we'll go to church, and then after church we're going to meet up with Karen for lunch. That's a lot to process. There's, okay, at first I've got to get out of bed, and then I've got to go get ready, whatever that means, and then eat breakfast. Breakfast sounds good. And then, okay, then we got to go to church, and how are we going to get there? And then who's Karen? I can't remember who Karen is. That's a lot for somebody to take in. And very often, they hear that and they just shut down. The easy answer is no. The easiest thing to do is nothing. I'm going to stay right here because I don't want to get involved in whatever that whole mess that she just said was. So we need to keep it simple and be direct. So even something as simple as, one-step approach, saying, come with me. You don't need to necessarily say where you're going or why you're going there. But you can very often get that ball rolling with a simple thing like come with me. And as we're simplifying, we do also need to understand that there needs to still be some aspect of control in their lives. They have to feel somewhat autonomous. They don't want to feel bossed around or like they're just doing what somebody else says all the time. So we want to introduce and present choices. And that both provides them the autonomy, and it also can reduce the stress. So even something as simple as going out to dinner. I know Kim's mom, when they'd go out to dinner, if they gave her a menu, she'd look over the menu for half an hour and get overwhelmed and not be able to decide. I'm actually not too far off of that. But if she told her mother, said, hey, would you like the salmon or the chicken? That was an easier decision to make. The same thing can go for getting ready in the morning. Do you want to wear the blue blouse or the green blouse? They both look great, but the green really brings out your eyes. Mix in those compliments and, make them feel good as they're making the choice. Another little trick I have with choices is sometimes if you really need the certain answer, you can give a ridiculous choice. So occasionally when I'm working with a resident that might be a little more resistant to whatever we're trying to do, I'll give a ridiculous choice. Like, hey, do you want to go jump on the trampoline or would you like to go for a walk? And most of the time I say, well, I definitely don't want to go jump on a trampoline. That sounds terrible. So I guess, I'll go for a walk. Now, you do have to be a little careful with this. If you ask your husband if he wants to go out to dinner with Sally or if he wants to go clean the gutters, he might get it in his head that he needs to clean the gutters. And the next thing you know, he's got the ladder out and we've got a whole separate set of issues. So you do have to be a little careful, but it can be fun to kind of sprinkle in a little silliness, and it can actually help you get the answer that you're looking for. Another way to do this is through the let's approach. Instead of saying, do you want to get dressed or will you get dressed? It's very easily in their mind to say no. And I'm not saying they won't necessarily say no to the let's approach, but it seems like it's a little more of a jump to get there. People are generally more receptive if you say, hey, come with me, or hey, let's go do this. Let's stop in the bathroom real quick. That can be really helpful. When you're doing these things, you also need to try to avoid surprises. You need to let them know what you're doing. So, bathroom example, anytime I'm helping somebody in the bathroom, I'll, get them in and get them in front of the toilet and I'll say, okay, I'm going to help you with your belt. And then I'm going to help you pull down your pants. And I'll say, okay, let's take a seat here. They're not feeling ambushed. They understand what I'm doing and maybe why I'm doing it. And I'm not just some stranger in there trying to take their pants off. Another great tool for people with dementia is called validation therapy. Now, validation therapy is kind of a way to step into their reality and connect with them instead of correct them. So a long time ago, when somebody with dementia began, say, looking for their parents, or thinking that they had to go to school, or looking for their children that are now long grown, caregivers would try to reality orient them and say, no, you're 80, your kids are grown, they're fine, don't worry about it. Or, no, your parents died 30 years ago, you're 82, you live in this facility. And that would obviously be really distressing to them. So someone with dementia, if they're looking for their parents, they fully, with their heart of hearts, believe that their parents are alive and they need to find them. So could you imagine if you were in that situation and somebody that you might not even recognize came up and said, no, your parents are dead? That would be like learning that information for the first time again. And we've seen that, when people connect the dots or learn that their parents are dead or that a spouse has passed away, they relive that trauma, sometimes for days, that they just kind of relearn that information. And it's unnecessary to put them through that. We also want to be careful with lying to them. We don't want to just lie every time and say, oh no, your parents will be here in an hour, because that's not really fair either. So validation therapy is a great way to kind of step into their reality and engage them without making them experience things that might be traumatic. So for example, if I have a resident that's wanting to go home, or even, many people who still live at home, they want to go home. The home in their mind might be the house that they grew up in, or the house that they bought just after the war, or some other thing from earlier in life. It wouldn't be helpful to tell them, no, this is your house, this is where you live, you sold your house 100 years ago, somebody bought it, they tore it down and turned it into condos. That wouldn't be helpful. But you can start a conversation. Well, why do you need to go home? What do you have to do? They might say, oh, I need to make dinner. Oh, well, what are you going to make? No, I'm going to make spaghetti. Well, what do you like to put in your spaghetti? Do you use canned sauce or do you make your own? Now, I grow tomatoes, so I like to make my own tomato sauce. And you can start a friendly conversation that's related to whatever they were kind of hung up on, and steer it into something a little more comfortable. So before you know it, you might be talking about the house that they grew up in, or who their neighbors are, or playing stickball with the kids on the street. And after a while, they've completely forgotten about the need to go home to make dinner, or whatever it might have been. We need to remember that as this disease progresses, the most recent memories are the first ones to go. So it's very common for people to kind of work backwards through their life and get to a point where they're looking for their parents or thinking that they need to go to school because they're kind of back in that time period. And that's one of the reasons that, music from their adolescence is so meaningful and powerful, because it's not lost and it's got all those strong memories tied to it. When things do get difficult, you need to remember not to argue. I've worked in dementia care for more than 11 years, and I have never seen a caregiver or a family member or anyone win an argument with dementia. There's no point. It's just going to upset both of you. You just need to remember that they're doing the best that they can and trying to make sense of things with the brain that they have left. We need to break out our customer service voice. I'm sure you've all seen it, whether you've called your least favorite cable company with a dispute over something, or you've seen somebody yelling at some poor wait person in a restaurant. They don't push back. They don't argue. They say, yes, I'm very sorry that that's happened to you. I understand. This is my fault. Just like the customer is always right, our person with dementia is always right. And it's not worth causing an argument when you can just kind of swallow your pride and go with it. Just apologize almost every time. That will make it better. And when all else fails, we can distract. We can introduce another task, especially if there's something that they enjoy, whether it be doing artwork, playing cards, calling somebody, that can help. Or introducing, sweets. Say, okay, yeah, well, let's sit down and have some ice cream and we can talk about this. That can be very helpful. We can also try to find a way to kind of kick the can a little bit. We offer a solution to the problem that's got some sort of time constraint on it. So we can fix it, but we can't necessarily fix it now. So if it's 6 o'clock and your loved one is set that they need to go to the bank because they need to do something, and tell them, oh yeah, we'll go to the bank, but it's 6 o'clock. They're not they're not open right now, but we can go in the morning. Or if your loved one thinks that they need to go to work, you can say, hey, I talked to the boss. They're shut down for today. There's a water main problem, but we'll get back on it tomorrow. So you've addressed and confirmed that you understand that their concern is real, but bought yourself some time. So maybe tomorrow morning they have forgotten about that and you can kind of start fresh. And that's it for verbal communication. We'll see you in the next lesson, which is nonverbal.